Welcome to an all-new Smash Ultimate character review. This time we are going back to the fighter that basically launched this channel, Ridley, the cruel and cunning god of death. We will be covering every aspect of the space pirate in detail, so here are some timestamps for those who want to jump to certain sections. Lastly, before we start, if you have any questions about the lingo and terminology I use, I highly suggest watching my Frame Data 101 video. Otherwise, just leave your question as a comment below. Ridley first appeared all the way back in 1986 in the first Metroid game as one of the two sub-bosses before you fight Mother Brain, the other being Kraid. Since then, Ridley's lore has been built up from a goofy purple dragon to a conniving, sadistic sociopath who ravaged all of Samus' home planet and might have eaten her mom's corpse. Yay, Smash Brothers! Well, you'd be hard-pressed to find a more iconic Metroid villain than Ridley. Despite not usually being the final boss himself, Ridley has found his way into almost all the Metroid games in one form or another. You have Normal Ridley, Meta Ridley, Mecha Ridley, Neo Ridley, Omega Ridley, Proteus Ridley, even Little Birdie. God damn it, other M. And Sakurai has done a good job reflecting that imposing boss energy into his character traits. Right off the bat, the first thing you'll notice about Ridley is just the amount of space this guy takes up. He is without a doubt one of the largest fighters in the roster. Even though this makes him look badass, it also makes Ridley a huge target. This means you're one big piece of combo food, and you'll often get tagged by attacks other characters wouldn't. Getting through Zoner's walls can also feel like trying to thread a needle with a rope, but all that size has to come with some heft behind it, right? Well, kinda. 107 units isn't light by any means, but the weight of Ike with the size of Bowser does not always make for a good combination. You'll live to see decently high percents, but not really enough to justify the hell of low percent combos you'll endure. Luckily, Ridley has a few attributes to make this a bit less painful. The first is that he is fast, really fast. Tied with Charizard for a top 10 run speed thanks to those wings, and while his airspeed is a bit meh, his good jump height mixed with that handy third jump mean not only can you easily soar up to great heights to smack your opponent, but you can also put a lot of space between them and you to get yourself out of a tough situation. Ridley may only have one more jump than average, but it's worth its weight in gold. You can use it to keep up pressure during strings, extend your offstage presence for edge guards, mix up your landings for bait and punish, make an approach safer by jumping away instead of landing, and delay your recovery timing. You can even use it to turn around in mid-air, which comes in handy for choosing between forward or back air and changing your angle of recovery, which we will talk about later. Bottom line, Ridley is surprisingly fast and can make it across the stage in no time at all. Combined with his size, this gives him a certain claustrophobic presence. Of course, that size is a double-edged sword when it comes to getting hit. Use that extra jump wisely, don't panic, and realize that sometimes you're just going to have to eat a lot of hits. It's okay though, because he can make up the damage later in the match, right? Let's take a look at Ridley's attacks and see if that's true. Okay, let's begin with Ridley's jab. Jab 1 is by far Ridley's fastest attack at a sprightly frame 4. It doesn't have the best range though, and sometimes the jab hits won't link together properly, so be careful. This is the first jab we have covered that gives you the choice of either doing a rapid jab or a jab 3, sometimes called a gentleman. Do rapid jab if you want more damage and range, but do jab 3 if you want it to be a bit safer, more consistent, send at a better angle, and even kill at higher percents. If you manage to get a jab lock by hitting the opponent as they miss the tech, I suggest either a frame-tight forward smash or sweeping them up with a down tilt for a quick follow-up. It's up to you. Overall, not a bad jab to have, but not without its issues. Next up, forward tilt. This pike thrust is a great poking tool literally and in application, being super safe when properly spaced at the tip. Kill power ranges from poor on the sour spot to fairly commendable at the spear tip sweet spot. This doesn't make the sour spot useless, however, as it still sends at a good angle for tech chases, which are Ridley's bread and butter, letting him use his amazing ground speed for huge follow-up potential. This is probably a good time to point out that Ridley does not have a hurt box on the latter half of his tail, making a lot of his tail stab moves disjointed like a sword. This doesn't apply too well to his F-tilt because he holds his tail with his hand for it, but it is something to take note for the rest of his moveset. Besides being a pretty safe attack for footsies, the best uses for F-tilt involve angling it up or down. Angling it up will allow it to combo from down throw and potentially catch wayward aerial approaches, but angling it down makes F-tilt a potent 2-frame killer, so it's worth getting the timing down for it. A solid move, if a bit unspectacular. Down tilt is a similar story, another great poking tool with a sweet spot on the tip, but instead of sending outward and potentially killing, down tilt should be used strictly for setting opponents up on a T for you to knock away. This isn't the fastest sweep in the game, but for how much range it has, that isn't a big deal. It's still plenty safe when spaced correctly. Ironically, for the true combos, you'll want to hit the sour spot, as the tip sends way too high for them. This lets you combo into a ton of different attacks. Forward tilt, forward air, neutral air, I even got back air to work. But beyond the bread and butters is where down tilt really shines and shows just how bad being above Ridley can be. Use it to set up for a platform tech chase, flip them up for an up air kill, catch their air dodge or even their landing, scoop them from the ledge. Most of Ridley's moveset doesn't truly combo well into itself, but it makes the opponent do something and you can capitalize on that. This is what I will be referring to from now on as the one Mississippi rule. You know you can't truly combo into something, so you knock the other player into a bad spot, wait for 1 second, keep your options open, see what they do, and hit them even harder. Ridley thrives off of this, as we will see throughout the video, and down tilt is one of the best conduits for it. A top 5 Ridley move for sure, and you'll be using it often. The last of the tilts, up tilt, has Ridley shrug his wing in an upward slice. Again, this tilt is decently quick, but not blistering. It technically has a sweet spot on the wing's elbow spike? I think it's technically called an alula. Anyway, it doesn't matter because you'll most likely never hit it, even if it does make the move kill a bit earlier. Now, this attack serves 3 main purposes. The first is for platform pressure. It's super fast, it has good range, and everyone always jumps after you hit their shield with it, so go smack them with another aerial. The second is as a combo starter, confirming into itself, nair, back air, fair, and even an up air for the kill a little before 100% if you can manage to nail the tight execution. The final use is as the best anti-air in the world. Not only are Ridley's wings already disjointed, having no hurtbox of their own, but the stem of his wing and most of Ridley's upper body is also intangible during the attack. This means if timed right, it will flat out beat almost every landing option or aerial in the game, and with Ridley's speed you can juggle all day long. Apply the one Mississippi rule to it and get some huge punishes. I use this attack probably more than I should. It's so unassuming, but so useful at the same time. But it's time to move past the tilts and take a look at the big chomp. Ridley's dash attack is pretty standard all things considered. It isn't very fast at all, but the sheer distance that Ridley lunges forward with it make it great as a landing catcher or burst option for whiff punishing. It does decent damage, it kills pretty well, and it confirms from a handful of other attacks. Simple and effective, nothing else much to say. Now we're on to the good stuff, forward smash, or as I like to call it, the plasma sneeze. It is by far Ridley's strongest kill move. This brutal mouth explosion does a crazy 20% base damage and can kill lightweights before 50%. Its enormous power and relatively low end lag make it better than you'd expect on shield, and the way Ridley rears back first make it great for hard whiff punishes. It's not the fastest move though, so you're typically going to need a decent read to land it consistently. But like I said, it's not terribly unsafe, and the reward is huge, so feel free to throw it out every once in a while to keep the fear instilled. Up smash, I'd argue, is even better. Not only is it much faster, being quick enough to use effectively out of shield, but it also has a much better hitbox, carving an almost complete arc around Ridley's body. On top of that, the attacking leg is intangible, meaning it will trade, if not completely override, almost everything. This move is just great. It's quick, it's relatively safe, it's very, very powerful. Use it as an anti-air, use it to read an air dodge, or better yet, use it to cover an entire platform for a brutal charge tech chase hit. The only downside I found is that hitting shorter characters on the ground can be an issue, especially on the front hit. But that really is a small complaint in the grand scheme. No pun intended. One of Ridley's best attacks. And last, but, well, to be honest, least, is down smash. Don't get me wrong, it's not a terrible attack. It has a gigantic range, hitting well below the stage and way past Ridley's huge wingspan. It's good for covering the most area possible after a successful skewer, as well as catching rolls and especially ledge options, since Ridley will straight up jump over any get-up attacks. But unfortunately, it's also the slowest down smash in the game, taking the better part of half a second to hit something. It has its niche, but you'll be left wanting for a bit more power or maybe some armor like K-Rool to make up for its abysmal startup. Time to cover Ridley's grab game, and I'm not going to spend much time on it because there isn't a lot to talk about. Ridley's grabs are all mediocre across the board. Not the worst frame data, but definitely below average, with some appalling range too. They are serviceable enough, but Ridley is pretty damn far from a grappler. Same song and dance for forward and back throw. These are your basic stage control throws. Grab the opponent, toss them away, and hope you can hit them with something more substantial after. Forward throw does 9%, back throw does 11%, neither really kill. Since DIing out is good against Ridley's down throw, you could catch someone sleeping with a fast forward throw near ledge, but I wouldn't count on it. Down throw has a bit more to it, but is mostly your standard lower damage combo throw. At low percents, you can true combo off of it into things like forward tilt, forward air, neutral air, of course, and a powerful reverse back air. It's not the most consistent throw in the world, so sometimes it's worth applying that one Mississippi roll to it to double or triple your potential reward. It's an extremely DI dependent throw. DIing out basically cuts its worth in half, and DIing in means much bigger combo windows and even respectable kill power. This pairs well, like I said, with forward throw, especially at the ledge. Up throw doesn't have all of that nuance. In fact, beyond doing the most damage of Ridley's throws, it doesn't have much of anything. Well, alright, it does put the opponent directly above Ridley, which is like setting a ball up on a tee for Tiger Woods. It can also come in handy on triplats to set up for tech chases on the top platform, or hope for some fake follow-ups. But at that point, you're better off chucking them off stage for an edge guard. There's a reason you don't see this one used often. With that anticlimax covered, that's all of Ridley's ground attacks. But let's be honest guys, we're reviewing a character with 3 jumps and enormous wings. It's the aerials we really care about. So let's not waste time and move on to those, shall we? Formula dictates that I start the aerial section with neutral air, and if you could only watch one part of this video, I highly suggest it be this one. Seriously, this is not only Ridley's best, most versatile attack by far, but it is a strong contender for the best neutral air in the entire game. Where to start? Well, it covers a huge amount of area around Ridley for a substantial amount of time, so it'll eat up air dodges, air to air, and edge guard with the best of them. The weaker late hit even sets up into things like dash attack or back air. It auto-cancels on short hop, making it one of Ridley's safest attacks to use in the neutral and on cross-ups. Honestly, if you have a question of what move to use in a given situation, you won't go wrong with neutral air. Trying to get off ledge? Neutral air. Need to land? Neutral air. Cover platform? Start and or continue a combo string? Punish out of shield? Nair, nair, you get the idea. It isn't a perfect attack. The initial hitbox starts at the 5 o'clock, which along with its 8-frame startup can make it tricky to punish cross-ups. And even the sweet spot will have trouble taking stocks unless you go off stage. But this isn't just Ridley's bread and butter, it's his water and flour, the very foundation. Use it often or you'll be playing with a handicap. Next is forward air, the triple tail stab. Like most tail attacks, it has a sweet spot at the spear tip, and landing all 3 hits of it will net you some serious damage. Like Nair, it's probably not going to kill unless you go off stage first, but it's so good for edge guarding anyway, that's not an issue. Matter of fact, you can use fair with that extra jump Ridley has to literally carry your opponents into the blast zone with a wall of pain. Or you can land with it to get some drag down confirms into stuff like jab, mix-ups into grab or down tilt, whatever you feel like really. It's also a very popular choice for Ridley players to get off the ledge more aggressively. It's not the fastest or safest attack, but it does impressive damage and has a lot more utility than it might seem at first glance. Back air doesn't bother with all that sweet spot, sour spot nonsense. No sir, here Ridley just swings his leg back and bam, you get 16% base damage every time and KOs under 100%. It's fairly quick for how powerful it is, the hitbox is very generous, and you don't need to worry about proper spacing unless you want to make it safer on shield. It's a decent out of shield option if your back is turned, and it works well with Ridley's jump stats to catch the opponent sleeping. It's crazy how you can just throw it out without much risk despite how strong it is. Elegant in its simplicity, back air is one of the most reliable power attacks in your arsenal. Next on deck is up air, the Skyrim special. This wing shrug is one of the biggest up airs in the entire game, and combined with Ridley's jump height, you can reach up high and tag someone deceptively quick. The sweet spot at the tip of the wings is very powerful, dealing 14 base and killing below 100% depending on how high up they are. Since the tip hitbox has priority, it's surprisingly easy to hit, but the sour spot isn't exactly weak either. Use it to poke through the stage and hit unsuspecting opponents at the ledge as a cheeky mix-up, or even as a starter for some very dangerous combos. Though this is difficult to hit on a ground level opponent, I suggest dropping through a platform or something. You can true confirm into up air with up tilt at the mid percents, and plenty of attacks will set you up for more fake combos into it. It's a fantastic pressure and juggle tool, oppressive against slower characters, and a big reason why being above Ridley sucks so bad. And I guess we might as well be comprehensive and cover down air. It's a typical stall and fall, like Toon Link, Sonic, or what have you, but worse than all of them. Unlike most stall and falls, it doesn't have a splash hitbox when you hit the ground, so your opponent gets to enjoy all 32 frames of landing lag. It has a spike at the start, technically making it one of the fastest in the game, but even if you manage to hit it, it'll probably cost you a stock, relegating it to style points only. You can use it as an aggressive landing mix-up, rarely, but it's so weak and the hitbox is so small I wouldn't even recommend that. The only thing Dare is useful for, really, is to get back to the stage quicker after being launched, or as an edge guard at higher percents. The hitbox is so bad you'll probably trade with any recovery you hit anyway and won't lose a stock. Ugh, Ridley's down air makes me angry, so much wasted potential. Let's just move on to his special moves where things are much more promising. How fitting we start with the first attack Ridley ever used, Plasma Breath. This is Ridley's only projectile. Tap the B button and fire off a little ball of plasma, or hold the B button to charge and fire up to 5 in a stream with each dealing more damage as well. As a standalone projectile, it's way too slow in comparison to stuff like Mario's Fireball, but rattle off a full salvo and you can cover most of the stage with plasma, overwhelming weaker projectiles on their way, pounding shield, and generally wreaking havoc. The plasma balls have their own physics in a way, sinking in the air and bouncing off of surfaces. This has obvious edgeguard utility, but you can experiment with it to find ways to cover even more area, or set up for things like jab locks. Speaking of setup, provided you follow behind them, these little balls of death can true combo into anything faster than a dash attack. Get a full charge stream to hit first, and watch the damage soar. It all seems very encouraging, but it turns out this attack has its very own Achilles heel coded in. Just like in Metroid, Ridley's mouth is a weak spot. If he is hit while charging, the plasma will explode, inflicting 8 to 20 damage to Ridley depending on how charged it was at the time. The weird thing about this weakness is that Ridley will never take any knockback from it, and it cancels out whatever damage the attack would normally do. So while it can make you take enormous damage and stun from the tiniest of blows, ironically it can sometimes save you from an attack that would normally KO. That doesn't make it a viable defense or anything. Ridley reels back for almost a second, so you're liable to get hit again regardless. Weakness or not, neutral B is a foundational attack for Ridley, especially in the neutral. Like any good boss fight, you should strive to put in a good proportion of plasma projectiles in with your melee attacks. But what if you don't want to attack from a distance? What if you just want to grab them and just... That's where Side B comes in. Space Pirate Rush. I hate that name. Sounds like a Disney Channel show. Screw it, I'm making up my own name. Face Drag Mutilation is Ridley's version of a flame choke. The longer the drag, the more damage it'll do. Until Ridley hits an edge, he releases early or they mash out. The higher the opponent's damage, the more difficult it is for them to mash out. But that can also change to be easier or harder depending on if Ridley has 30% higher or lower damage than the target. As a rule of thumb, if Ridley is at low damage and you're at high damage, you're not mashing out, and vice versa. If a mash out does happen, nobody has the advantage, making Ridley's jab a popular choice to follow up with due to its speed, but it's important to keep mixing it up. I recommend doing an early release with jump to get more damage if you know the mash won't be in your favor. Used on the ground, or even landing, Side B is horribly laggy and extremely risky. Luckily in the air it's much better, which comes in handy for recovery. Speaking of which, if Ridley grabs somebody in midair, he will start soaring downward. If you hit the blast zone, Ridley will die first, so that's not recommended. Instead, just go as low as possible and let go of them. Depending on which direction you're facing, you can either smack them against the stage, or gently place them right next to the blast zone and give them a little nudge. Both are hilarious ways to rob games. Side B is very important for Ridley, for recovery, getting off of ledge, snatching up those too comfy in their shield, and taking stocks, obviously. But it is also very high risk. It's easily reacted to and even more easily punished, so you should not get into the habit of fishing for it, but used wisely it will definitely reward you. Speaking of recovery/kill moves, up B, aka Wing Blitz.
Some time, gets away from to it. Here comes Harrison chasing. Moore, oh my goodness, Moore is absolutely walloped.
Think of this as Firefox's big dumb cousin. Instead of going in any direction you hold, you get 4 angles. Straight up, forward but sort of down, backwards but slightly up, and down but slightly forward. I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty limiting for your recovery, especially since it takes about 2/3 of a second to start moving, leaving you pretty susceptible to getting hit and stuck at an angle you can't recover from. You're going to have to use your jumps to get at the right height or to turn around and be able to use the right angle if you don't want to just recover straight up. Wing Blitz will behave differently depending on the position you approach ledge with. For instance, recover sideways high and you'll go past ledge, drop down, and land. Slightly lower, you'll still go past ledge, but you'll cancel into a slide animation. Go lower still and you ride the ledge, keeping your hitbox out but not grabbing immediately. Lower still and you might just bounce off the wall, putting you in a pretty bad spot. And finally below that, you simply snap to the ledge. Fortunately, Ridley isn't completely helpless when he's recovering. His wings are intangible on most angles, making the hitbox massive and able to power through things that would knock side B back. It's also not something you want to get hit by, dealing huge damage and knockback. Try holding down when going up towards ledge. This will help you poke your wings through the stage just like up air, relieving some pressure and maybe even scoring a KO. Just make sure not to hold down too early or you'll quickly find yourself heading towards the blast zone. The slow speed and high damage make it total counter fodder as well, so make sure you keep that in mind and try your best to mix up the timing. As a purely aggressive tool, Wing Blitz is largely confined to hard mix-ups and flexing for the stream, but since the downward angle auto snaps beautifully from a standing position, it can be a fun toy to get spikes and ledge trumps with. Ridley mains have begrudgingly accepted up B's limitations, and while it can be annoying to deal with when trying to recover, the sheer distances it lets you come back from help give Ridley his distinct offstage presence when you're the one on the offensive. Speaking of on the offensive, let's cover the infamous skewer, known in Japan by its much more fitting name,
Death Stab.
Down B asks the question, what if forward tilt was 3 times slower and did 4 times the damage? Of course that damage is only if you hit the tip, with the tail doing a pitiful 5% and neither doing any shield pressure. This is basically Ridley's Falcon Punch and about as practical, but here are some situations where hitting it is a bit more feasible. Number 1, out of a low percent down throw to catch their air dodge down or button spam. By the way, this will work on Snake players every single time. Number 2, off a hard get-up read at the ledge, after a jab lock, or what have you. And number 3, after a shield break or an overzealous up B attempt to catch them in freefall. If you manage to hit it properly, the enemy will crumple in front of you. They get to act 4 frames before you do, so there aren't any true confirms out of this crumple state, but down smash or side B will do a good job covering most options. You'll feel like a big brain god for pulling off a skewer, just don't expect it to happen very often. And with that, we are finished covering Ridley's moveset, top to bottom. Let's head over to the final verdict and see where the big guy stands. Things are off to a good start for Ridley, as speed gets a 4 out of 5. His frame data is respectable, if not great, and his top tier ground speed and excellent jumps help make up for below average airspeed. Ridley is surprisingly quick for his size, and you'll never feel like you can't keep up. When it comes to offense, I think Ridley will actually stay at a 4 out of 5. Individual damage output is above average, you can string attacks together decently well, and you have one of the best advantage and juggle states in the game. Remember that one Mississippi rule. Dealing damage is not the problem, it's actually taking stocks that will give you issue, making you either hit a smash attack raw, go off stage for a deep edgeguard, or land temperamental sweet spots. The lack of a normal kill throw, safe aggressive options, and reliable kill confirms can sometimes make getting KOs a real slog, without opening yourself up. And speaking of being opened up, Ridley is getting a 1 out of 5 for defense. I'm sorry. Yes, Ridley is on the heavier side and has things like an extra jump and good hitboxes to keep opponents at bay. But Ridley's sheer size make him a huge target, and he does not have the tools to squeeze out of tough situations once he's in them. combined with a very limited out-of-shield game and a recovery that, while good distance-wise, is very easy to mess with and really suffers immensely on the defensive. Finally, we reach versatility, and it's going to be another below-average grade, unfortunately. Ridley is a character who technically has an answer to most problems, but those answers are only 70% effective. Plasma Breath helps with zoners, but Ridley still finds his big ass pelted. Big hitboxes help keep faster melee characters at a distance, but once they're in, they rip you apart. His edgeguarding game is fantastic, but when it comes time for him to recover, you'll be holding your breath. Most of his losing matchups aren't terrible, but you'll still find yourself having to outplay a little harder, space slightly better, and take a few more risks than your opponent to get the W. Overall, I think Ridley perfectly encapsulates what a boss character is. Absolutely overwhelming if you let him have his way, but with some very obvious weak points to exploit. You want to use your big hitboxes and fast speed to always keep your opponent at a certain distance, where your attacks do the most damage and they can't combo you to death. Matches don't follow ideals, unfortunately, and sometimes you'll be left wanting just a bit more. He's perfectly capable of getting the job done, but it ain't always going to be easy. If you're okay with that and you want to play a unique big body that focuses more on careful spacing and precision than raw power, I say give Ridley a try. Thanks to everyone for watching. Sorry it took me so long, I wanted the next batch of character reviews to be way better than the last. Hopefully, I accomplished that. Special thanks to our patrons who support us in between videos, subscribe for more character reviews when they are finished, and don't forget to vote from the nominee list in the pinned comment below for which character I'll cover next. See you guys later.
Congratulations!